friends, and welcome to the first ever Boxes and Briefs podcast with me, Abid. So the first episode wanted to give you a quick crash course on some aspects of boxing, just because whenever I talk to someone, most of the time they have no clue what the hell I'm saying. So I thought this would be useful. Boxing is a pretty confusing sport, so feel free to ask any questions if you're totally lost, which you probably will be. First off, boxing as a sport has been relatively unchanged since 1867, when the Marquis of Queensberry basically wrote the Queensberry Rules, or had them published. He didn't write them. He wasn't that smart. Basically, a set of 12 rules were written because he really liked fights, but he didn't like the fact that it was mostly 12, like 100 shirtless guys cheering on 2 shirtless guys in the middle. Not that fun. So he came up with the rule that it has to be in a ring, right? A prize fight has to be in a ring. Revolutionary. Rounds have to be 3 minutes. Breaks between rounds have to be 1 minute, and then you get 10 seconds to recover if you fall down. So since that time, boxing has not really changed that much. There's only been a refinement of the rules, but all those rules still hold true. A boxing championship fight is 12 rounds, usually, and at the end, the winner is crowned champ, right? Or if you have a draw, the champion retains his belt because he did just enough to be good enough to keep the belt. Anyway, he didn't lose it, basically, is the point. So the scoring system in boxing is what's known as the 10-point must. The 10-point must system means that the winner gets 10 points. The loser gets 9 points or less. And over a championship fight, you're fighting for those points for 12 rounds, obviously. If I knock you down, right, I get that round, I get a 10 round, and you get an 8 round, because it's -1 per time that you fall. And that's basically just the scoring. If you really are in a hurry, you don't want to wait until the judges' scorecards are read out, you can knock the guy out, or technically knock the guy out. So you can either knock him out cold, where he's on the floor just fidgeting, or the referee and or ring doctor can intervene and just be like, I don't like the way this is going, I'm going to stop the fight. Which is fair, because I know I made that fidgeting joke, but I don't actually like to see fighters hurt. I appreciate their craft and I appreciate them, and they are much braver than me because they actually made the way into the ring. I don't want to make fun of them. Sorry, all boxers. I love you all. So that's basically the actual fight. Now everything around the fight is the part that's super confusing. You have several people involved in any fight, right? So it's not like any other sport where you have like a central body that governs what happens. Nah, you have different bodies that govern what happened in every fight, basically. So, for example, right, let's say I want to take a fight against a champion of one of the 4 major sanctioning organization belts. But my promoter, right, who's the person that really handles my career, doesn't like their promoter. The thing about boxing is that could actually be a reason why that fight does not get made. Another reason could be that my promoter signed a deal with a certain television network. The other guy is signed to another certain television network. Again, another reason that fight can not be made. So you see where I'm coming from? It's weird. It's weird to wrap your head around it. But the thing is, the last few years, boxing's been great. It really has. 2018 was a great year. We had Anthony Joshua, this gigantic, beautiful man that fights at heavyweight in the UK. We had him defending his belt against some pretty worthy challengers. We had a Fight of the Year candidate across the pond in Los Angeles. We had the other 2 claimants to the heavyweight title. We had them basically vying for supremacy. Just when the heavyweight division does well, the rest of boxing does well. And those weren't even the best fights that year. You had Gennady Golovkin versus Canelo 2, which I think Golovkin won. I think most people would agree with me. Canelo, love you, great fighter. Don't think you won that second fight or the first one, just to be clear. So you have a lot of interesting fights in the pipeline. This, like, even with all the issues, like the promoters not getting along, the television stations not getting along, fights still can happen, right? Because at the end of the day, if the fighters really want it to happen and the fans really want it to happen, it happens usually. In the case of Mayweather-Pacquiao, it happened 5 years too late, and it was shit, but it happened. Okay, so that's basically just like a quick intro of what's going on. If you want me to go through, like the sanctioning organizations, promoters, the different alliances, we'd be happy to do that. I might actually do that next episode, just because that's its own world. Like we can take it like promoter, and then just go through that. I'd love to do that. You know what? I'm not even going to wait for it. Next episode, I'm going to talk about the promoters and all that, and the different alliances and the sanctioning organizations. But for now, I'm going to get into some of the biggest news this week, right? Have some notes, just so I don't forget. First one is Tyson Fury Tyson Fury and Frank Warren signed a co-promotional deal with Top Rank in the United States. And Top Rank is the Bob Arum company, and Bob Arum is possibly the greatest promoter of all time, right? He promoted Ali, and he promoted Pacquiao, and he promoted Floyd for a while. He's promoted everyone. He's the best in the game, by far. Like, he takes talent where it needs to go. He makes champions. He's the best, right? The thing is that when they signed this, they did it for leverage against Deontay Wilder, the guy that he had a great fight with last year. And they did it because when they went to the table to negotiate the rematch, it wasn't going Tyson Fury's way. He didn't like it because technically he's not the champ, right? Because he doesn't own a belt. But he's a huge name. He beat the guy that beat the guy. Like, he has a claim to the heavyweight title because he never actually lost any belts in the ring. But technically he's not the champ, and technically if they were to fight, they would have had to fight on Deontay Wilder's preferred platform, which is Showtime, right? Just because in the United States, Fury wasn't aligned with anyone. That changed when he aligned with Top Rank, which is aligned with ESPN. So why this is important is just because, like I just explained, right? If he's aligned with ESPN and the other guy's aligned with Showtime, it could stand in the way of a fight. I really don't want it to stand in the way of a fight. The first fight was so good. Tyson Fury boxing his ass off, just doing a great job, moving like a 130-pounder instead of a 220-pounder. It was magnificent to watch. And then Deontay Wilder proved why he can hang at that level, because he has a rocket-propelled right hand that put Tyson on his ass once in the 9th round, I believe, and then again in the 12th round. And I honestly thought Tyson Fury died. I thought he was dead. I thought he was murdered in the 12th round. I don't know how he got up. Everyone's seen that GIF or that video of him getting up. I don't know how he did it. It's crazy. So I was really hyped for the second fight. Now, everyone's saying, right, that this won't stand in the way of the second fight. I have my doubts. Like, just as a fan for a few years now, I know that sometimes promoters will play the blame game and just wash their hands of it. I hope that there's enough demand for the second fight for it to get made. Okay. The second thing is, this is a rumor, nothing confirmed, right? But Gennady Golovkin might be retiring soon. Or, like, he's been on vacation from boxing since he lost that fight to Canelo. Again, I think he won that fight, and there's a very good argument for a draw. I don't think there's as strong an argument for Canelo winning. But basically, he's been on vacation since then, which the fight happened in September, right? So it's been quite a few months. And his trainer is just saying, like, he's still on vacation, and when he comes back, he'll decide. But it really seems at this point, that he's just not going to come back, which would be devastating, because He's my favorite active fighter. I love his jab. His jab is probably the best in the game. His footwork is underrated. His defense is underrated. This guy is a wrecking machine. Check him out if you can. I would recommend the second Canelo fight actually because that was a barn burner. It was a great one. But just basically any video from HBO titled Gennady Golovkin's greatest hits because I think there's like 7 of those. But great stuff. Would highly recommend. I don't want him to retire. I want him to sign with DAZN just because that's where all the big middleweights are. You have Danny Jacobs, you have Canelo, you have Boo Boo Andrade. You have a bunch of other. Can't really think of them right now for some reason, but you have a bunch of other contenders, and I want him to get back, and I want him to fight Canelo again. Father Time is not on his side, and I think that the third fight will probably be a pretty clear-cut win for Canelo, just because he has time on his side. Gennady's plateaued. I don't think he's gone down. I think he's definitely just at a level that he's not going to improve. Canelo's still on the upswing, so that third fight, I would call it as Canelo by UD. But I want him to make all that money that would happen from that third fight, and I want to see him back in the ring just because he was so good in those 2 fights with Canelo that it was just a sight to behold. The third one, this is actually the one that I might spend the most time on, is that for some reason there's hate for the fight that was recently announced for Vasily Lomachenko versus Anthony Crolla, right? And I think that's a great fight. I really do. I like that fight. Like it's not 2 world beaters, but Crolla he was a champion at that weight. He fought his heart out against Linares. Linares beat him, sure, okay, but he gave him a lot of trouble before he beat him. And then Lomachenko beats Linares, okay? Crolla, since that loss, has been working his ass off, has some pretty great wins on his resume. He's earned the title shot, and he's a solid guy. Like, I don't think he'll beat Lomachenko. Lomachenko is a favorite against basically anyone that weighs 135 or below. Anyone. Like, even Mikey Garcia, I would favor Lomachenko in that fight. I think it's a great fight, should it ever happen, but Mikey's at 147. That's a whole different argument, right? But people are hating on this fight just because they think Crolla's an easy touch. Look, boxing math does not work. Just because Lomachenko knocked out Linares does not mean that he's going to easily beat Crolla. That's not how this works. It never has, right? Crolla is a tough guy. He comes to fight. I think it'll be a fun fight. I favor Lomachenko, but like we have to see how this goes. You have to let them fight the fights. I think that the main issue, right, is just because Crolla, when he was champ, it was workmanlike, right? He no one ever thought he was super special. He isn't, but like there's something to be said about champs that are just hardworking, right? Like Bernard Hopkins was never like super duper special. He was just a guy that was able to eat clean, train clean, and just work hard enough to consistently stay at a world-class level. He's like, I think the longest reigning middleweight champ of all time. He's definitely going to the Hall of Fame because he moved up from middleweight 2 weight classes and then took a title in his first fight at light heavyweight, right? But there's something to be said. My whole point about Bernard Hopkins is that there's something to be said about someone that lives clean, works clean. Like, he's not special, but he works harder than basically anyone. I like this fight. I don't understand why people are hating on this fight. It didn't go as long as I had planned. I'm not gonna lie, right? I have notes here just so in case I forget anything, just because it's my first time. Got to ease into this podcast thing. Another big piece of news. This isn't boxing actually. This is MMA, but that's like another thing that I absolutely adore. I think I love combat sports because it's literally just the purest form of athleticism. It's literally just 2 guys trying to impose their wills on each other, and I think that's as pure as it gets. Like being in there in a ring, basically fighting for your life, right? Is it doesn't get more to the core of what a human is, right? Any other sport, there's another point. Like, oh, you play football to score goals, or you play basketball to dunk on someone, and blah blah blah. But like at the end of the day, boxing this is someone that worked their ass off since they were probably less than 10 years old, and now they are imposing their will on someone. It's the purest athletic accomplishment in my eyes, to be honest, right? And the same goes for MMA. I think it's the same. I think MMA is very interesting just because the boxing is very much limited. You have two tools, right, and you have to move around the ring, but you don't get to use anything other than these two things. MMA is interesting because they take away that restriction. So there's definitely, in my eyes at least, there's less finesse, right? There's less perfecting one specific thing, and a lot more of just like being really good at a bunch of things. So it's a different dynamic, but it's just as interesting. Anyway, that's a long-winded way of getting into the latest news, which is George St Pierre, one of the greatest fighters of all time, is retired today. I'm very disappointed just because like during my time as a fan, I only ever got to see one George St Pierre fight because I only became a fan during his retirement, like his first initial retirement, where he left the sport for 4 years after that decision to Johnny Hendricks. So I got to see him fight Michael Bisping. Like, I wish I was there. I obviously got to see it like on my laptop, but it was a great fight. I loved that Freddie Roach was in his corner. I loved just seeing him like answer the riddle using boxing and then finishing it with some jiu-jitsu. It was great. I'm also disappointed because I really wanted to see more GSP fights. I wanted to see him against Khabib. Everyone knows Khabib now, but here's the thing about Khabib, right? He's a crazy good wrestler, okay, with okay striking. He's a terrible striker. I'm not even gonna try and sugarcoat this, but I wanted to see a great wrestler versus a great wrestler, and the X factor would have been GSP's amazing striking. Because like when you work with Freddie Roach, your striking is great. Like that's just how it is. But yeah, no, disappointed about that. But like, here's the thing: at the end of the day, he had the courage to get into the cage. He had the courage to leave with all his faculties intact. Because that's really the tragedy, right, of fighting, when someone leaves too late. I would much rather a fighter leave too early than too late. So I don't hate that he's leaving. I'm just disappointed. But great career. It's always fun to see his highlights. Check him out, by the way, if you want to get into MMA. He's a great way to get into MMA. Just because he has great technique. His wrestling's impeccable. He has great striking. He really puts it together well. He's fought a who's who at that weight class, welterweight. He's great, yeah. So that's it really for the big news. Hello, friends. You might have noticed a bit of a jump. Just because it's my first podcast, I kind of, even with the notes, forgot to add a few things. So wanted to talk quickly about some MMA stuff other than GSP retiring. Wanted to talk about Kane and Ngannou. I don't think that stoppage had anything to do with Ngannou. I thought Kane's knee gave out completely. And it's devastating, because here's the thing. Since I've been a fan, I have not seen Kane fight once. I have not seen him fight once. All I've done is seen highlights. I've heard the tale of Kane. But he comes into the ring, and then like 36 seconds later, his knee pops. And the he's not a spring chicken. You know, he's like 37, 38. So he's not long for the fight game. So it's devastating, but like I just want to make clear, right, that Ngannou did not have anything to do. Like obviously he did because he's a giant, right, and he's raining down hammer fists. But what I'm trying to say is that Kane was not hurt before he fell. Like he fell because of an injury, and the stoppage should have been because of an injury. Obviously, Francis being a giant raining down, like I don't know, bowling ball fists really did not help. Wanted to talk also about Whitaker. Whitaker getting that freak, what's it called? Hernia. Right, I remember the word. Getting that freak hernia and pulling out of the Gastelum fight. Here's the thing. Gastelum has won enough to be in there with him, but I really did not favor him in that fight. I really did not also appreciate the fact that Gastelum was walking around with a belt afterwards. Like, you're not the champ, man. You didn't beat the champ. The champ had a freak incident. Calm the fuck down. I do, though, very much like the recently announced fight, Adesanya versus Gastelum. Because Adesanya, I think, is very much on the up and up. I think he's a great fighter. He's very interesting. He has great defense, so he doesn't go to the ground because I don't know anything about his ground game. I think he's very much just a striker. Like, I'm sure he's worked on it, but like he's primarily a striker. He comes from a kickboxing background, I believe. And his striking is great. I do like that fight just because I don't think Gastelum is the best wrestler that he'll be in there with. So it'll be a striking match, and Gastelum has great striking, so it'll be fun. My personal pick would probably be Adesanya in 3, probably, yeah, because it's going to be for an interim belt, I believe. 1 second, right? Because there was one more thing I wanted to talk about. Right, the ruling about the toe. So I don't know if anyone actually knows this other than people that really fucking care about the sport. But there was a fight stoppage recently where Megan Anderson technically won by knockout, or technical knockout, over Kat Zingano. This is women's MMA, I believe, in the 135 division? Yeah, 135. Possibly. Could be 145. Not sure. Anyway, the fight was stopped because of a toe poke. So Anderson was kicking, and her toe poked Kat Zingano's eye. And like that doesn't seem like it should stop a fight, right? But like a kick at full velocity, toe poke in your eye, I get it. Now, Kat Zingano apparently objected to the fact that it was stopped. And there was a ruling recently, which I found very interesting. I just wanted to share the ruling, right? That it is a TKO, just because in the same way, it's not the same as an eye poke with the fingers, right? Because if you poke with the fingers, you're doing that on purpose, because you can control the fingers by making them to a fist. You can't do the same with your feet, right? You can't make a foot fist. So you can't control your toes. Therefore, it has to be ruled a TKO, because even if it's an accidental TKO, it's a TKO because it's not something that the person did that could have been avoided. So I just wanted to share that ruling because I thought it was really interesting. And the cool thing that I like about MMA, at least, right, is that because it's such a young sport, the rules are constantly evolving, and the fact that the person that first wrote the unified rules of MMA, like Big John McCarthy, is still around commenting. Like that's the difference between MMA and boxing, right? The Marquis of Queensberry has been dead for like over 100 years, but in boxing, in MMA, Big John McCarthy wrote the rules. He can explain the rules, and just I don't know. I'm just nerding out because I like the fact that this is. Maybe it's just because I'm an engineer, right? But like engineering is basically working within constraints, and this just seems like violent engineering. You know, that's all it is. It's really interesting. It's an interesting concept for me. I don't know. I like it. It's cool. So that's all I wanted to say about MMA. Back to the regularly scheduled podcast. And now, friends, we come to the briefs section of the Boxers and Briefs podcast. So the main thing I really wanted to talk about this week was the fact that BeIN seems to be leaving the sports game. I don't know if entirely, right, but definitely at least when it comes to Formula One, which is one of the biggest sports in the world. BeIN no longer owns the rights to Formula One because it gave them up willingly. Because of the whole pirating thing. Like, I don't know if you've heard about BeOutQ, But because of that, because of the pirating that occurred during the World Cup, BeIN will no longer be showing Formula One, which is devastating because BeIN was the way that I've been watching Formula One for the past like 4 years or so. 3 years. Yeah, 3 years. And it's just like the season begins in a month, and Formula One has to basically scramble to get a new broadcaster because BeIN was apparently 7% of their broadcast revenue, which is gigantic. It's ridiculous that a contract that big can just be cancelled, right? And just it's been interesting for me to see the radio silence because we haven't heard a single thing. The season's in a month, right? You have 2 races in the Arab world and no broadcaster in the Arab world. And Formula One, through its app, supposedly has Formula One TV, right, where you can watch the races with the official Formula One broadcasting team, which is the good one, by the way. I hated the ones in Arabic. Yeah, but all of that can't happen in this part of the world because we're a bunch of backwards people that don't believe in apps, apparently. So I just have to wait until Formula One locks down this deal with probably OSN Sports, which is super overpriced, and I want to watch Formula One. I don't want to pay so much money for nothing, okay? Because OSN forces you to buy packages, and the packages are garbage because they don't have like any original content. They just steal shit and license shit, and like I don't want to pay for the OSN Sports package. That's way too expensive for a sport that I like that used to be affordable. Anyway, it's turned more into rants than briefs. That's really all I wanted to talk about this week. Like there are a few other things, but I'm not gonna lie. Since it's the first podcast, I'm gonna stay nice and in my comfort zone, and maybe we'll try out some of the other stuff like in the coming podcasts. Next week, like I said earlier, I want to do basically a deep dive into the promoter, TV, boxer, world sanctioning organization relationship, right? Because that's a whole spider web. So I want to focus the whole thing on that. Maybe the week after that, maybe we can do something where it's just like a bit of a review of the boxing that's happened, a review of the MMA that's happened, and then maybe just a review of what's going on. I don't know. This is still new. The format's not set in stone. Hey guys, sorry, last cut. Just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think. I really do want to do this like weekly or whenever I can, really. I don't know, that was fun. It was basically a stream of consciousness for about 30 minutes. Yeah, just give me any constructive criticism you have, or any criticism at all. It won't hurt my feelings. It's fine. But yeah, just wanted to say thanks for watching. Much love.